Let's jump back to the first record in this database and discuss a little bit about the tagging and coding. So if you notice here on the right side of the screen that we have what's called a layout in relativity. Layouts are a web-based coding form storing the bibliographical data and metadata about a record, as well as the tagging and coding structure used for the review team. These are highly customizable and completely secureable from user to user and group to group. Right now I'm logged in as a power user, so you're going to notice that I have quite a bit of different coding forms available to me. We're on the one that's called just plain coding, and it looks like it's concerned with a bunch of different issue tags. We have one that's called first pass review, and if you look at this one, you'll see that it's got a very limited amount of bibliographical data. If I were a first pass reviewer, my options would likely be locked down to this coding form, and I wouldn't see all of the others that are in that list. I would have vision to the forms that only included the decisions I needed to make. So there's one here for assigning documents. There's also one for somebody that might be authoring a privilege log. Then there's also one called all fields. This one actually has all of the metadata that's about this record. Let's go back to the coding. This is where we can place some rules on these layouts and ensure the quality and consistency of the review. For example, I can make some fields read-only. The control number and the custodian fields are actually read-only, and even though I'm actually in edit mode at the moment, I can't edit those fields. The orange boxes designate that a field is required throughout relativity. So for this particular coding form, it looks like responsiveness is a required decision. If I were to uncheck any values in here and try to save it, it would not allow me to do so. I would have to make a decision before moving on to the next document. Also, we can set up propagation rules. Let's say I tag this document as privilege, and I want the designation to automatically propagate to any of the other members of this record's family, or maybe any duplicate in the system. The copy from previous rule allows users to copy the coding decision from one document to the next before saving. This is quite useful when batches of documents are assigned out to reviewers based on a conceptual similarity, where quite often the documents will be coded the same. We could also set up advanced logic on these to enforce best practices and workflow rules. Maybe this particular review, there is a rule that says at this stage a record cannot be tagged as both privileged and responsive at the same time. So if I were to try to save it, you would see it would not allow me to save it and say that this document cannot be marked as responsive and privileged. Or maybe we were trying to go to a different place in the review and someone were to tag this document as privilege, and they would be required to pick a deeper determination on which subtype it is. At this point, if they didn't select it, it would actually tell you that you need to select a subtype. We can even set up rules that if someone comes in and tags something as, say, super hot here, they would actually have to put in a reviewer comment. Or maybe they marked it as en fuego. In addition to that comment, they were going to have to it'll send off an email to the lead partner in this case saying something like, this document has been tagged as en fuego. Here's a hyperlink. You may want to go take a look. Some review platforms make you tag records as reviewed, but we can set up some way to set up smart criteria to manage that process. So maybe your responsiveness, your privilege, and your confidentiality are all what's required to review the document, and they've all been selected and addressed. We can automatically have these documents flagged as reviewed and shut off for second-tier review. So what we're really trying to do is give you the tools to sit down with the case team, come up with the best practices workflow for the review, and then solidify and automate these features. This way, everyone has the decisions, documents, and information that they need to be very fluid and automated without a ton of extraneous noise in matters that don't concern them. Are there any questions about layouts and relativity? I'm going to go ahead and finish up the core reviewer interface by talking about the related items pane. This is where you can put in the different relational groups about a record. In this case, I'm looking at the family at the moment. So you can see I'm on the actual original email, and then here are all the attachments, that Excel file, that PowerPoint file, the Korean Word document, and then that document that had the track changes turned on. Maybe I don't have those propagation rules for family groups turned on, but I know that all of these documents are responsive. I can actually select all of these, edit them, and do a mass action. Then I would just click Save. But in this case, I'm going to cancel out. Here are the duplicates of this email. This table is actually fully customizable. You'll see we have control number and location, but maybe we would want to see the privilege designation as well over here. Then we could do a quick QC of how duplicates or privilege documents are being coded in the system. We can also view similar documents. This is actually built into Relativity, powered by the analytics engine. Or maybe we've already processed that data through another tool prior to bringing it into Relativity. Another thing that Relativity does is it keeps a full audit history of every user action in the system, identifying whether documents are reviewed, whether they've been updated, who did it, when they did it, and then even some details on how they did it. Was it one of the propagation rules we talked about, or did they directly edit the record? I can click on these details and take a look. I can actually export this out to Excel and save it. I can actually filter. Say I only want to see everything that was an update. As a side note, all things that we audit can be reported on. So whether you want to see how far we are in the review based on responsive designations, or maybe productivity reports to understand how many documents per hour or edits per hour our reviewers are making, all of that can be run within Relativity. Finally, circling back to the production history. This is so I can see all of the production that this AS01 was associated with, the dates that they were produced, and then the beginning and ending Bates numbers. I can actually export this out into Excel, or maybe I want to see how these productions look during this Acme production in September of 2008. All I'd have to do is actually select on this radio button here, and make sure it says the Acme production. It looks like it was marked as confidential, and then there's some redactions here. Now I'd like to see what that Chicago production looked like that was almost a year later. I would just use that drop down to select the Chicago production. And as you can see, it looked a little bit different. It wasn't confidential, and the redactions are quite different. So that's a quick and easy way to view all of the various productions and see the differences between them without having to look through different databases or having to have a convoluted workflow. Are there any other questions about native file viewers?